All right, thank you. Let's see. Okay, I'll try to run through some of these slides pretty quickly. It's a repeat for a few of you, but for those of you at home, obviously our recent news as of January, we had Mayor Atkin was selected our mayor here, and Nora Davis was selected as our new vice mayor. And we have Jack Asher continuing as our council member, but we have our two new council members who've joined us, Diane Martinez and Scott Donahue. So in preparing for this, I really spent a lot of time thinking about the last year and a half, and really what this city has accomplished. And I think of 2014 really as a year focused on what I just call stabilizing our base for city government. As the mayor mentioned, we lost over half of our budget when redevelopment went away. And with that, we also lost a lot of the programs that we run. And so there's been a major adjustment that we've had to make. We passed our first 2-year budget, operating budget, in June in the post-redevelopment world. Actually, the council adopted and we implemented a major reorganization of the city structure. I think the first reorganization probably in over a decade. And we continued some major initiatives, which I'll get into. So the city's budget, without boring anybody to tears, we have a 2-year, I love talking about budgets all day long, but my husband calls me a masochist. So the 2-year budget actually that we passed in June maintains our 50% reserve, which is phenomenal. This council set this policy in place several years ago, and we've been able to maintain that even despite all of the other issues that we've been having. Also last year, we refinanced all of our debt. This was all of our former redevelopment debt and then also our city debt. This was a big endeavor, and it was extremely successful. It generated a lot of savings to the city, and I will share with you the fact that I had to run as a lead for this for our city. For our redevelopment debt, when we were out in the market in Wall Street, they were familiar with Emeryville. I mean, it was amazing out in New York. And they knew our name, they knew our reputation, and despite other issues that we're having, we were oversubscribed or oversold 3 times over when selling our debt, to the point where we actually raised the price and did really, really well. So that was exciting. So all of that has been done. We also passed our first 5-year capital improvement program in the post-redevelopment world, and I'll get into some more details on that. As the mayor mentioned, we passed 2 big ballot measures for the city. Council also adopted and we implemented new developer impact fees, which I'll get into. And we also closed 3-year contracts with all of our labor unions, which I will also talk about. So the city's budget, just briefly, just so for folks watching at home, order of magnitude, it's about $30 million, and that really funds the majority of our city programs and services. And where does your money go? There's a lot of information here. The main point that I want to make is that public safety services are over half of our operating budget. This is not unlike most cities in California, but we do continue to maintain the majority of our funding does go towards police and fire. Our city revenues. Again, a lot of information here. I think a couple of things that I want to highlight. The majority of our revenues in this 2-year budget are not projected to increase significantly. We are looking at really modest growth, and that's been consistent with what we've seen for this first 6 months of this fiscal year. We're talking about a 2 to 3% in most of our revenue categories. So really just enough to keep pace with the rising cost of doing business. So we're really not looking at things increasing all that much. You'll note here that the transfer tax that the mayor mentioned that was recently passed by the voters is not yet included in our budget. That's something that staff is working on and will be coming to the city council when we bring a mid-cycle adjustment later this spring. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. You'll see there that transient occupancy tax, for most people, we just call this hotel tax. It makes up 16% of our budget. That's a good chunk of our budget, and that is actually projected to increase in the size of the pie when the new hotel comes online in a couple years. And one last thing I do want to mention there is you'll see that our property tax is that orange piece of pie. It makes up only 6% of our general operating budget. This is very different than most cities in California. The reason why that is so low, and you can see sales tax is 25%, again, unusual compared to a lot of cities, is that most of our property tax actually goes to the former redevelopment agency. 95% of our city is made up of a former redevelopment agency, and the property tax does not come directly to the general fund. This chart we've looked at before recently. This is just to show you in the capital improvement plan that came to the council, the last one that we passed, which was when redevelopment still existed. You can see there that the majority of the funding came from redevelopment, which is the 69% there, and only 31% of it came from the city. Right now, we have had to think very creatively over the last 18 months to try to come up with some ways where we can actually continue to fund some of these projects. And when I say these projects, I don't mean, you know, the nice to haves. These are the have to haves. These are things like our sidewalks and our streets, our facilities, you know, leaking roofs. These are the things that we have to find funding for. And I'm happy to report that when we adopted our capital improvement program in June, it's a 5-year plan, we were able to find funding for about 80 projects. We had some one-time funding that we were able to cobble together, and in total we have about $100 million. Now that's in projected funding, so some future revenues that we're projecting will come in the next 5 years. So this may change, but we were able to fund approximately. In this year, we have about $43 million for 51 projects. You can see there, you know, some of the ones that we've highlighted. The ECCL, the Emeryville Center for Community Life, which I'll talk about in a minute, is funded by some former redevelopment dollars, about $25 million, which you can see there. And the South Bayfront Bridge and Horton Landing Park, which is the purple on the right side. We recently, about 2.5 weeks ago, received word that we were successful in the Court of Appeals in our lawsuit with the state to allow us to keep the funding that was available under the former redevelopment agency to move forward with the South Bayfront Bridge and the park. We are waiting. I'm not sure. Can't remember what our date is on how long the state has to petition the Supreme Court. It's coming soon.
February 15th.
Yeah. No one's counting though. Yeah. But of course, you know, we don't know that the Supreme Court doesn't necessarily have to take up the case, but we imagine the state will file a petition. So more to come on that. Just to highlight some major CIP projects that are set to be constructed in this current year. We have our sewer rehab project, big sewer rehab project that's happening on Powell Street, down at the Marina, Horton Street, and on 54th, so you'll see us out there. Our Joseph Emery Park, the skate spot, long-awaited skate spot, is going to be constructed very soon. Christie Avenue Bay Trail. We're also doing a major rehab on the Peninsula Fire Station and the Senior Center. You'll see a new project of sidewalk rehab throughout the residential neighborhoods, Hollis Street reconstruction, and the ECCL. A lot going on. So just briefly on an update on the Emeryville Center for Community Life. As I mentioned earlier, we have about $25 million of former redevelopment funds that we were able to preserve to help fund our portion of this project. The total cost of the project is about $90 million. The remaining funds are coming from the school district's bond measure. The gym and the pool are slated for completion in the summer or fall of 2015. The high school is supposed to be complete in next winter, with the elementary done next summer. And then we will have our first library and a community-based health and wellness center, along with our community services and the district's admin offices, which will move in next winter. Measures U and V, I won't go into too much detail on these other than to say, you know, what the mayor mentioned is that these both passed successfully, did not change anything else other than allowed us to collect this transfer tax. Our city structure stays the same. The one-time versus ongoing revenue, I get this question a lot. You know, as the mayor mentioned, there are some commercial properties that do change hands in our city, which potentially will generate a significant amount of revenue for us with the transfer tax. However, we are going to, in our budget process, recommend that that gets treated as one-time funds. They're not predictable. We've had some years where we haven't had any of these, and so what we will bring forward to the city council is actually what we're going to call the base, which is, you know, probably order of magnitude, maybe about $500,000 that we think that we'll get in just regular transactions on an ongoing basis. Impact fees, I don't want to get into, this probably has more detail than I want to get into, but for the public's sake, the city did pass three impact fees, an increase in the and expansion of the transportation impact fee, a new parks and rec fee, and a new affordable housing fee. These are really in efforts to backfill some of the lost redevelopment funds to pay for some of those CIP projects that I showed you earlier. Main point that I want to make here is this is a 5-year projection. Now, this might look like a lot of money to some people, but you can see over 5 years, in looking at the major projects that we believe will come online, we estimate that it'll only generate about $5 million for transportation projects, 8 for parks and rec, and only $41 million for affordable housing, which is a fraction of what we used to have. But it gives us something. Okay, labor contracts. 2014 was a really active year for our management labor relations. We came to terms with all 3 of our represented labor groups, and were able to close 3-year contracts with SEIU, Local 1021, and CAMP, which is our admin or management employees, as well as our EPOA, or our police officers. I'm happy to say that I think the contract negotiations went really well, and the relationship between the city and the labor groups is really strong. Public safety. I shared this anecdote the other day, and I actually tell it to a lot of people when I walk around town. When we were doing the polling for Measures U and V, and the pollsters came in to give us the results of what they had found when they went out to poll, not just whether or not the measures would pass, but also just to kind of get a pulse of the residents that were out there. And they also told me, they said, we have never seen anything like this. And I said, what do you mean? You mean the measures are going to pass overwhelmingly? They said, oh, yeah, well, we think that's going to happen. But what we really want to tell you is that we have never seen higher ratings for any community's police department. And I just wanted to echo that. Our officers are phenomenal. We deal with a lot of very complicated issues within the urban core here. We're working really diligently. We have regular turnover. We have about 4 vacancies on our staff right now, working very, very hard to fill those vacancies. And we're also working on a regional level, as we know, with recent demonstrations that really requires it, and we're doing an amazing job. And, you know, I just also want to praise our police department for really doing what I call their job as trained. It's not an above and beyond, but it's working and doing what they're trained to do, and doing constitutional community policing. We continue to contract with Alameda County Fire for our fire services, and we really benefited over this, where the fact that we have the additional resources such as hazmat, water rescue, and emergency preparedness. Community services, there's a lot on this slide. This is really an exciting expansion in our city services. We'll be coming to you, I believe, in 2 weeks to give you an update on our rec department. Same presentation that we gave at city schools, but just to kind of highlight how those programs have expanded. We continue to serve the community from infants all the way up to older adults. We have our city-owned and operated Child Development Center, which is very unique. Our after-school program, we're serving 194 kids now. Every time I have Cindy give me an update for this slide, that number keeps ticking up, which is phenomenal. Our senior center has over 1,700 active adults. 1,700. Blows my mind. Our special events, I mean, our staff has really taken this on as an entrepreneurial effort. We now are doing a spring fest. The tree lighting is getting better each year. The movie nights, we actually got Pixar this year to sponsor the movie nights, and they're going to do it again. Concerts in the park. We're doing the 4th of July. I mean, this is just a few things that are out there. When the mayor is talking about being the full service and the full city, I think these are the things that really make the difference. Aquatic youth adult sports. We're starting our adult sports, which is, I think, also very exciting. And you all can see, our activity guide goes out to you all 3 times a year. You can find all of those exciting programs. Overall, the economy is looking up. Unemployment is down to 3.5% in our city, which is quite low. Office vacancy rates are stable. They still, are nothing like what we're seeing across the Bay, but they're stable. Number of sales are up in terms of both our residential and our commercial properties, and the sale price is certainly up. You can see the median sale price there is up to almost $410,000. New and expanded businesses. I will, admit I have not been to all of these yet. There are some, although I'm anxiously awaiting the Nordstrom rack. We have a lot of new exciting businesses coming in. Nordstrom Rack and Ulta Beauty will be at the East Bay Bridge Shopping Center later this year. Major projects, I'm not going to run through each of these, but as I scroll through, you will see why we are so busy. Park on Powell is coming online right now. You can see the ECCL, 39th and Adeline, and 64th Christie. We've got these major projects that have been approved, so soon to start. 3706, which is our 100% affordable project up on San Pablo. Transit Center, which this council recently approved, and the hotel, which I mentioned earlier. Major projects in progress: the Marketplace redevelopment, the Nady site, and the Sherwin-Williams, which we have spoken about at length here. Building division. This slide here, I just really wanted to make one point, which is this is showing you our building permit valuation. So you can see by each year here, this is what we're estimating we're going to see in this fiscal year: $157 million of building permits. Valuation of building projects coming through our door. So we have been very, very busy. Google eCities Award. This is an award that Google gives to just one city in California, and we're happy to say that we were the ones that were awarded this. It's to recognize that we have the strongest online business community in the entire state, and that they're using the web to find new customers, connect with existing customers, and fuel the local economy. So we're very excited about this and marketing it. Future work. A lot more to go. As the mayor mentioned, the staff has been so directed, this is, I guess, 3 weeks ago, to craft a minimum wage ordinance that would take effect on July 1st at the rate of our living wage, which is $14.03. We're working away on that to bring to the City Council and to the public on February 17th, so 2 weeks from today. It'll actually be out in print in our city packet at the end of this week. So those of you that go onto our website, you can find the details there. We're drafting it really just using the structure of Oakland's Lift Up ordinance, and the council will take that up for discussion on February 17th. For those of you that are watching at home, our plan is to then really blast out the draft based on council's direction to everybody who holds a business license in town. So we really are going to be doing some outreach to get that out to you, and love to hear from you now. Then after that, please feel free. You can contact me, the council, city staff. We also are working on some homelessness issues, and we'll be bringing the report to you later tonight. And we'll be working on a lot of affordable housing issues, especially rent stabilization, as a council so directed us. We'll be bringing in a report to you all hopefully by the end of this quarter, looking at trying to get very, very creative within the confines of existing law.
The lawyers are so
Also, future work, I'll run through this really quickly. We're working on a lot of, I think, creative community engagement tools, some new communication efforts, which includes our new website and social media, C-Click Fix. Despite being awarded the E-City, Google E-City of California, there are certain things that we are a little bit behind on, and an example would be the fact that we don't have the capability to take credit card payments at our city front desk. So it's something that we're going to spend some time on. It's not okay. Our city-school partnership is continuing as part of not just the ECCL that's coming online, but really we already have started that partnership and integrated with our school district and our after-school program, and some exciting things that we're going to bring to you all about the ECDC. Our climate action plan, we are, as the mayor mentioned, going to bring something to the city council later this spring to give you an update and possibly make some changes to it. We are working in relation to that on a whole host of exciting projects. We have some new environmental services staff. One thing that has been exciting is that we have a new fuel cell fleet pilot with UC Berkeley and AC Transit, and we have our city staff driving around in some fuel cell branded vehicles as part of this really first of its kind pilot. And lastly, our economic development strategy will be coming to the City Council later this year. Emery Go Round, we'll also be bringing this. It's really, the Emery Go Round, I would say, is facing the challenges of its own success. We have about 1.6 million riders every year. Tremendous. If you think about having that many riders on this square mile, what that impact would be, facing some structural budget, some operational issues, and so we are actually looking at the renewal and expansion of the PBID, which is the the major funding source for the Emery Go Round, which we will also be bringing to the council later this year. All right. Now, Serenity tells me this is a link to the video, but I don't want to mess that up. I'm scared to do that. I just want to leave you, lastly, with something that several of you have heard me say now, which is there's a phrase that I would say gets under my skin, and it's when people say, you know, oh, that's fine, don't worry about it, it's good enough for government work. It drives me crazy. And one day I actually did look up the origins of where that phrase came from. Now, I'm going to preface this with, I think that it was actually whoever wrote the background on where it came from. It could have been a city manager, but I'm going to just take it for what it is. And this person wrote that back in World War II, when the industrial sector was starting to produce large quantities of war-related materials for the federal government, good enough meant that government had the highest and most exacting standards. So if work could pass government inspection, then it could meet any benchmark. So the phrase was really with a different tone, which was finally good enough for government work. And I just wanted to say that that statement is something that I think really is throughout the entire city organization here, and it's something that I inherited because it's been this way really for decades, thanks to the city council and incredible city staff that we have. Our standards are very, very high. And I want to say to the public, continue to hold us to that level. And just know that if you ever say that comment to me, I'm going to take it as a compliment. So. And then the last thing I really do want to say is just culturally, one thing that we really do take to heart within City Hall and throughout our city organization here is that we have an incredible responsibility. We have this amazing responsibility to, frankly, when I look at these other large organizations and agencies, jurisdictions that are out there who are struggling and are, whether they have political turmoil or it's a, bureaucracy where you can't get anything done, or they have, it's issues that are going on with their public safety. We have this unbelievable responsibility where if we can't figure out how to do things and do them right in this little jurisdiction, how can we expect anybody else to do it? We have all of the tools to get things done here, and it's something that, again, hold us to a really high bar. I think we can do even, I mean, we have a lot going on, did a lot last year, a lot more planned that we plan to do this year, but continue to the council, continue to push us, and to the public, continue to hold us to a really high standard. So with that, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, City Manager. I'll give you a minute to, for transition.
Public comment on this issue?
This, I'm working down the agenda.
Right.
Hold on a sec. Okay, so we're at public comments. Anybody wishing to speak on items not on the agenda, come forward.